Hello, and welcome to the Kink Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. On today's show, I first want to start out by thanking all of our new listeners that have been joining, getting some of your questions pouring in to address and start considering for future shows. I do really thank you for that. It gives me a lot of new ideas and some of the things that you're actually starting to think about that affect your time or all of us inside of the lifestyle community. I do ask if you kind of enjoy the show, you're new to the show, please like, subscribe, and rate me 5 stars on Spotify. All of that support helps me reach more people and really does keep these important conversations going. If you're so inclined, I do have a donate button now on Spotify. You can click on there and donate whatever you want. Every contribution, no matter how big or small, really does help. It does allow me to keep the show for free and keep doing what I'm doing for all of you out in our community. Now, today's show is a really important topic to me, especially given the month that it is. This month, we observe Men's Mental Health Month. So, for me, today's episode is particularly important. I'm really going to be focusing today on men and how we engage in our BDSM roles, whether that's dominance or submission, even if you're a switch, and how this impacts our psychological well-being. Understanding these dynamics really does lead to this profound sense of psychological benefit and overall our mental and emotional health. So first, I kind of want to dive into the bigger topic. We see this word get thrown around a lot, we talk about it a lot, but the reality is, do we really understand what it means? So I want to kind of go into a little bit deeper of a discussion of power dynamics here. So I want to lay a little bit of the groundwork. Now, power dynamics lie really at the heart of BDSM. It's the exchange of power that's consensually done, where one person takes on the position or role of the leader or the dominant, and the other one is willingly giving up that control or is going to willingly participate in following somebody else. The submissive bottom, maybe potentially slave, whatever shape or role you decide to take on. Now, shaping the experiences and interactions within the community really does start to help us as we learn about our roles, advance through our exploration of the lifestyle. At its essence, we do understand that BDSM does involve all of this consensual parts of exploration. Even when we have to understand, we have to learn how to consent with ourselves, that we are willing to do this and take this journey on. Probably even getting, well before we get involved with somebody else. We need to realize that some of the 3 main roles, and I'm not talking about, people ask me about all these other roles that are inside of the lifestyle, like Leatherman, and there are some really valid roles that I think that are in there, but all of these other ones like Chaos Gremlin, I'm sorry, I think those are more joking. I don't really understand what those have to do with the lifestyle. I'm not knocking them. But my opinion of those types of things is they're more maybe fun or juvenile fun, and it's something to make us feel good, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when I kind of look at the power dynamics and how those roles really transpire, I'm really looking at the 3 main roles inside of the lifestyle and how we revolve around those roles. So if I'm not covering your role, it's not intentional, and I know I don't really hate your role. It's none of those things. It's just I do have maybe more of an old school approach. Pardon me. More of an old school approach when it comes to BDSM and the things that we all like and enjoy. So whether you are a dominant, submissive, switch, top, slave, bottom, understanding these dynamics really does lead us to getting to a point where we can encompass and embrace the roles wholeheartedly. Now, we know each role carries a distinct psychological implication and its own benefits. For dominance, assuming the role of control and lead, it does go beyond the whole physical act. It really does involve psychological leadership, responsibility, planning, crafting. The dominant may find that whole empowerment in guiding the scenes and about setting boundaries and nurturing their partner's trust. This role does provide a structured outlet for assertiveness, decision making, which really can be psychologically rewarding in itself. Moreover, a lot of dominants often navigate the complexities of power dynamics by balancing authority with sensitivity to their submissive partner's needs. And this does allow us to foster empathy and develop our communication skills, which is really crucial for maintaining healthy relationships that sometimes men do struggle with. Or we don't have the best examples in our life sometimes to learn from and guide through and evolve from. Now, conversely, submissives derive liberation from surrendering control to their dominant partners. The whole act of submission is not about weakness, but rather a personal expression of trust and vulnerability. I would argue it's a extreme expression of vulnerability to the highest order to somebody. Because by relinquishing power here, submissives may experience this whole emotional release, stress relief, and a profound sense of acceptance. And this role does allow certain people to explore and process deep-seated emotions in a safe and consensual environment, and they know that they're going to be taken care of through introspection and connection. Now, switches, on the other hand, I've joked over the years, are greedy a little bit. Now, that's kind of a personal dig, like I dig at the rope community. It's not a personal attack. Y'all are greedy. You get the both sides. You get the best of both sides. But if I'm going to be fair, navigating between dominant and submissive roles, gaining this whole comprehensive understanding to the best of your ability of how power dynamics works from either side. Now, the versatility here enhances the whole psychological flexibility and empathy, as well as they adeptly shift between the asserting control and surrendering it. Now, switchers often find their fulfillment in adapting to different roles based on their emotional and psychological needs, and it does create a deeper sense of self-awareness and interpersonal understanding within our dynamics. I would argue with people who switch, you're not going to be as well versed in one role as somebody who spends their entire time in the lifestyle community that is devoted to that role. Now, I can already hear the pitchforks being raised and the torches being lit, but quite honestly, you can't master. I've been a dominant for 25 years, and I like to think I have a pretty good idea of the lifestyle and how it works and the things that are involved and the types of activities we do. But I've spent almost half my life doing that. If I spent only half of that time devoted to dominance and half of that time then devoted to submissiveness, or being a submissive, I should say, well, then I'm not really picking up as much. I'm not learning as much. We could argue both sides give and take, and maybe it is more profound understanding. I'm not attacking you, so please don't feel attacked. And if you are, well, you might need to search inside for why you feel attacked. But I promise you, I'm not really here. I'm not trying to beat up on switches. I do think you all are greedy, though. That's never going to change. Pretty much held that belief for about 24 years, and pretty much how I look at all of you. But that's okay. You do have something on the other hand that I don't. I've never submitted to anyone. So I don't understand that giving up. But I do understand what it's like to give trust. So all of these things give these perspectives, and since we're going to be focusing on men in this episode, all of these things give us a really deep perspective on how this works. And if we understand these roles, it not only enriches our personal experiences within the lifestyle, but it does allow us to underscore the whole complexity involved in the power exchange dynamic itself. Now, pardon me, a little froggy today, guys. Cold weather, lots of rain, not the best. I want to dive into the whole point of dominance and the psychological benefits for men. And I'm going to kind of go through each of the three topics, or the three roles, the main roles as I see it today, and then we're going to kind of move from there. Because I think it's really beneficial if we understand, especially given the month that it is, and for a lot of the times the flack that men receive, a little bit of a give back for them. So I'm an avid defender against this stuff, but I really think it's important that men, you talk about your feelings. And here are some of the benefits for you if you're a dominant. Now, there are a lot of psychological dimensions beyond mere control here. For many men, assuming a dominant role becomes really a transformative journey. And that journey is about self-exploration and our own types of empowerment. It's about transcending authority, and it involves cultivating a deep sense of self-assuredness, assertiveness, and leadership. And those things aren't always easy to build either. Psychologically, dominance really does serve as a powerful vehicle for our own growth, and how we specifically take that growth and tailor it for our own experiences. And by taking on this whole responsibility of guiding scenes and somebody else and ensuring their well-being and maintaining the sense of boundaries and consent, we're not only exercising our right to that control, but we develop really a deeper understanding of how to be empathetic, even in the most sadistic of manners, or even in the sweetest of manners. And another big part for men that grows here for us is our emotional intelligence. And this whole process here enhances our ability to navigate interpersonal dynamics. It allows us to build trust when that hasn't been easy for us, and something that sometimes we struggle with in relationships, let alone BDSM type style relationships, intimacy. Now, the whole practice of dominance encourages introspection and self-awareness, but what are some of these benefits for our mental health? Now, often we engage in reflective practices to understand our desires and our boundaries and our motivations more deeply. This heightened sense of self-awareness not only really enriches our experience within the lifestyle, but it allows us to grow our confidence, our authenticity, and outside of the lifestyle as well. We can take that into our everyday lives. And because when we take on this role, it's continuous negotiation, continuous communication, continuous boundary setting. These practices not only establish clear expectations, but promote mutual respect and emotional safety. And that's really what is essential for a lot of our men's psychological well-being. Dominants learn to balance their assertiveness with sensitivity so that they can meet their partner's needs and their own, and cultivate this profound sense of responsibility and ethical conduct. And that's something I don't think we talk a lot about as men. And I think it's something that's really important to understand as men. Talking about our feelings doesn't make us weak. I've written about this before, guys. I've talked about this a whole bunch of times. It's not as easy as just strapping on a title and going, I'm a dominant, let me pound my chest. There are guys who act like that. And I think you're shortchanging yourselves. You're going to have a very short trip inside of the lifestyle. Because most people are going to see that. They're not going to like it. They're not going to want to associate with it. Then that person's going to kind of blame the lifestyle instead of themselves. And they're going to end up leaving. I believe if you're going to do anything, you got to work hard for it. But not everybody's prepared to do and deal with how much effort this lifestyle does actually require. And it does require a lot. I was just discussing this with somebody today about even entering some type of 24/7 dynamic. It's not easy because you're getting into the essences of when you're macromanaging or micromanaging somebody else's life, let alone your own, and careers and families and responsibilities and bills and homes and cars, all the things that take up all of our time. It's a lot of work. So understand this, guys, when you really got to look inside of yourselves and what you're getting out of it, and that you are meeting the experience at more than halfway. Because otherwise, it's not going to be BDSM that's letting you down. It's going to actually be you letting yourself down. It's not going to be the community not helping you out, because there's resources, but you have to be willing to do those things. You also have to be willing to own your own mistakes if they do happen, admit when you need to learn and train. You have to do all of these things. The first, few years I was in the lifestyle, all I did was spend training and going to classes. But it's what made me a better dominant. And I screwed up along the way, and I own that, or I would explain I was still learning on something, or I was evolving, or whatever the case may be. But the reality is that being a dominant is a big thing, just like being a submissive is a big thing. Now, I want to kind of dive into the topics of submissiveness or submission for men. Now, for many men, the act of submission does offer this emotional release beyond the physical surrender. It does allow, from many of the men that I've spoken to, that are male submissives, they've often told me it provides them a safe space to let go of societal expectations and actually embrace their vulnerability. And this allows them to feel authentic and connect with their desires and their emotions at the time they're doing this. Psychologically, submission does serve as a therapeutic outlet for processing deep-seated emotions and stressors. By relinquishing control to somebody who's a trusted dominant, men can experience a sense of liberation and emotional catharsis. And this whole act of surrender fosters really a deep emotional connection and intimacy, unlike we typically don't encounter. And contributing to the whole enhanced psychological well being through trust is also mutual respect. Because submission encourages individuals to explore their own boundaries and desires, but you're not going to do that if you don't respect the person that you're with and they don't respect you. But when you do, you're creating this supporting environment where you can explore through self-discovery and embrace personal growth, which allows us as men to understand and expand our emotional needs in a more fulfilling manner. Submission does challenge traditional notions of masculinity by affirming the strength found in vulnerability and emotional expression. It's not easy, and I do understand it. Now, I've never been submissive. I've spoken to many throughout my life, and before I wrote this today, I reached out to someone. I'm going to change his name, but he was okay with me sharing his example, and I really appreciate that. So I want you to all, for a moment, consider James. Now, he's a submissive that works in a very demanding, high-pressure job. Works more so between 10 and 11 hours each day. Submission for him serves as this counterbalance to his professional responsibilities. And by yielding control to his dominant partner, James really does find relief from the pressures of his work life. And this release allows him to unwind, recharge emotionally, and experience profound stress relief and mental clarity, ultimately improving his overall mental health. This practice of submission for James enhances his emotional resilience, and it does foster adaptive coping strategies for him and a deeper understanding of personal boundaries. Men who do engage in submissive roles often report greater emotional stability and self-acceptance, and they learn how to navigate and communicate their needs a little bit more effectively within dynamics and beyond. Now, embracing submission inside of our lifestyle, it is a nuanced journey that typically integrates this emotional release and trust building and personal empowerment typically more tailored towards female needs. But men, if this is something you lean towards, there's an entire world you're unlocking for yourselves, or a side that you've been maybe yearning to tap into, that this can free you up and allow you to explore and embrace. Now, for this next part, again, I'm not dogging you switches, so I'm going to be much more direct and clear on this one. I'll be even a little bit more clinical to help you all out. Again, I've spoken, there's somebody I do know. He's been a good resource over the years. I've talked to him on and off. I've changed his name as well because of his stance in the community, and but he gave me a lot of insights into his role as a switch. So now, some men do find the profound fulfillment for themselves between switching inside of the lifestyle. It can be seamless at times, but a lot of times, as my friend kind of informed me, we're going to call him Eric. Eric said that the versatility did enrich his understanding of power dynamics, but it also was at times more exhaustive, because sometimes he would be in a certain role and then by accident he might slip or switch into the other one. So there is a lot more mental fortitude that does go along with it. It does allow him to experience a little bit more of the spectrum of power exchange from both sides and gain a deeper understanding. He understands about exercising control and assertiveness and leadership, like I spoke of before, which over time really did help him learn promote his communication and how to verbalize how he was feeling. It boosted his confidence not only inside of the lifestyle, but actually in his professional work. But in contrast, he felt a little bit more centered towards his submissive side, where he was able to embrace vulnerability and surrender and have some emotional releases when needed, because these weren't things that were easy for him when he was growing up. And when we are sheltered sometimes about certain things as we grow up, it affects us in our adulthood. So sometimes we need a different type of space to explore those emotions in a safe manner. Now, psychologically here, the ability to switch between the two roles can provide a unique advantage. It gives somebody the opportunity to integrate diverse experiences and perspectives into their self-concept. But like with this example with Alex, sometimes you have to remember what role you're in and how much you're giving of yourself in that role, and how to control yourself from maybe or potentially not slipping into the other role. And it's really, as Eric really kind of described it to me, this whole fluidity transition between the dynamics gave him over the years a lot of insights with not only the community but with his partner. The versatility here has strengthened his mental health, confidence in who he is. Pride was another one that he was talking about, that he feels happy about himself after years before of looking at something where he was, at a person he said he didn't enjoy who he was. Now that he's embracing a multitude of things in a very consensual manner, the reality is that he's found himself and he's happy about it. And it's great when I see someone like that and they're beaming from ear to ear. And that's really what this is about, right? So what is this whole impact on our mental health inside of these three predominant roles inside of the lifestyle? It does provide a real structured framework for all of us for exploring and expressing our desires, which does reduce our anxiety. It enhances our self-esteem and offers us a unique avenue to process and manage emotions and build confidence, understand what it's like to be not only responsible for somebody else, but be in charge. And the act of assuming these roles, either a dominant or submissive or even a switch, does allow people to explore different aspects of their identity and emotions in a controlled pace that they're comfortable with. Because while we want to explore these things with a partner, and while this can go for everybody, but you guys specifically, I want to just say this to you, what this really does for you is gives you the environment and space to do something that you feel comfortable with that fits. The roles we assume should fit like a warm blanket. And if they don't, if they're itchy or scratchy or they just don't feel right, well, maybe we haven't found the right role yet that fits us. Names notwithstanding, I'm not talking about, being a lord or a ducky or a footstool or a boop. I'm not talking about all that. Each one of those inherently is in some subcategory of something else. They're not their own. So I know that's going to cause an argument, but I mean, ultimately they're one or the other or somewhere in the middle. Now, one thing I don't talk about, I have discussed the alternatives to aftercare. I'm not saying aftercare is not something that we don't need, and I'm not overly supportive of it. If both partners agree, great. I think it's beneficial. But if partners don't agree and neither one of them wants it, great. You figured out what you need. You figured out your needs and you don't need it. You can move on. But the reality is it does give you this a moment at the end of a scene, even in post scenes, maybe a few days later, that we check in. We're talking about our capacity, our mental health. We're talking about our emotional support. We're making sure that we feel safe as much as we want to be safe and care for our partners that are involved in the scene. We want to feel emotionally grounded as well. And it is okay for us as men to express these things. I think it's needed. And we have to open up that conversation a little bit more. And that's kind of why I'm doing this today. Because it's really, we're kind of at this point now that we don't talk enough about men's mental health. And given the month that it is, I feel this was kind of really needed. So I want to give you all a few healthy practices. And for you guys out there who listen, that send me your emails and ask me, why do I suggest these things? And you're very reluctant. And then you go out and try them. And then I get an email back from you saying, thank you so much. Just do it. Don't argue. Just do it. Just try it first. Hear the suggestions. Try them. Maybe create a variant that works for you. And then let me know how that works. All right? That's a deal I make with all of you guys. And if they still don't work, or you're like, that sucked for me, or it didn't happen, cool. Well, maybe I can create a few new ones, or I can think of some new ones for you and be willing to help out. But maintaining healthy power dynamics within our lifestyle does hinge on fundamental elements we all understand: clear communication, enthusiastic consent, mutual respect, boundaries, and abiding by them. These principles do create this whole framework for us that promotes trust and emotional safety and the fulfillment of our desires inside of our dynamics. And we understand that effective communication is crucial. And if we're open to negotiating our boundaries and discussing our desires with our partners, we do begin to establish a shared understanding that promotes all of these things that we're looking for. But we can't forget the amount of effort that's going to be required. We can't expect somebody to meet us more than 50%. Because, guys, we've got to put that in too. And if you got a partner who's not matching your efforts, well, then you need to, reconsider what that's doing for you, right? Because if you're not consenting to that, if you're not willing to put in more effort than you're already doing, well, then you need to really think about how that's affecting your mental health. And it's a very valid thing. I'm not telling people to break up before I get some hate mail about that. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying it is crucial for men to consider how much effort they are putting into something if that effort isn't being matched. That's all I'm saying. It's the same type of support that I give to women all the time, but this time I'm specifically speaking to men. Now, I want to say this to you because consent gets beat to death, and I'm probably not going to mention any more about that today. But understanding the different forms, just get enthusiastic, make it clear, and don't do consent on the fly, right? Just get your consent, do your scene, finish your scene, wrap it up however you're going to wrap it up. Change nothing but what you've agreed upon. And then discuss it and see what you maybe want to do next time. That's how you can keep evolving scenes. You don't evolve a scene in the middle. You throw everybody off, including yourself, right? So if you're a male sub or a male dom, or you're switching that night, right? Don't screw it up, because you're going to screw yourself up and you're going to screw it up for the other party. The experience is going to suck, and then someone's going to go on social media and complain about it. And yeah, that's no good for anybody, right? So let's just avoid all of that. Now, I've got 4 tips for you all. I want you to think about this that are really healthy practices. Communicate openly, often, and regularly discuss your limits, your desires, and your feelings with your partners. I got this question the other day, and somebody asked me, how often do I have check-ins, right? I've been in a dynamic for a really long time, and I know everything for the most part about my partner and how they breathe and how she responds to certain things and everything, right? But we still check in. Every 6 weeks now is kind of where we moved. I would suggest in the beginning, when you're first starting out, nobody in the first few months, I'm going to go old school approach here. Your first few minutes, you should be doing nothing but talking. There shouldn't be any playing. You shouldn't be negotiating scenes or anything like that. You're getting to know each other. It's like dating. You haven't even had sex yet. A scene is like sex, right? It's really intimate, really personal. So get to know each other. Don't rush it. But then when you get to the point that you are probably going to try your first scene together, you're really going to start experimenting. You're going to open up some trust and vulnerability between the two of you. Great. Now, if that keeps negotiating and you're going on, let's now maybe say we're at 3 or 6 months at this point, and you're saying we're comfortable and maybe you are going to start working towards a training collar or whatever you're doing, right? You shouldn't be collared before 6 months. It's a different discussion for a different day. But nevertheless, if you're doing all of these things, I would suggest you do your check-ins, pre-scenes. You should have a check-in always before a scene. Like if you negotiated a scene coming up in 2 weeks and it's going to be a fairly large scene, do a check-in 2 weeks out, 1 week out, and maybe a couple days before. Make sure everything is on board. Nobody's mind has changed. Maybe nobody got sick or has a work function or family pet died. You want to make sure everything's good to go, right? We have the capacity to move forward. Something I've talked about in the past with a wonderful dominant down in South Africa. So, sorry guys, I have a really froggy throat today, so I apologize to you all. So these are quite, it's something you should do. Once you get into a relationship, you start hitting the 2, 3, 4 year mark. I would then suggest check-ins are at least monthly. You can move them to bi-weekly, and that's fine, like every couple of weeks, depending on how maybe you can consider how active you're playing. If you are playing 3 or 4 times a month, you might want to check in every couple of weeks. If you're only playing maybe once a month, you're still following a BDSM style life, but you don't have that much time to scene. Maybe once a month is just adequate. I'm at once every 6 weeks. It's very adequate for my dynamic. It's helpful. We get everything out we need to say. If we set up a scene, though, we ramp up how often we're checking in. That's for my capacity and understanding and health, and that's for her capacity, understanding, and health, right? And that's an easy way to segue into the second point here, prioritizing our consent. Enthusiastic, it's informed, and it doesn't change, right? And that goes for us, guys. You've got to be enthusiastic when you're doing stuff. You got to make the best. You got to have all the information when you're making a decision. So don't do those things if you don't. Guys, we're more susceptible to wanting to have sex with someone if they're willing to engage with us. And I mean, frankly, if some girl is asking you to have sex with her, you're more than likely going to want to. But don't you want to know all the information before you jump right in? I'm not saying she's, this particular. I'm not beating up on anyone here. Just make sure you have all the information before you're doing something. Right? You're not going to go jump in go hop in a car that's going to try to jump across the Grand Canyon without understanding if they have even any parachutes or what safety measures are involved. So if you're not willing to risk your life there, why are you willing to do anything that involves your life with somebody you may or may not know very well? Right? So consent, knowledge, right? Thought process. Number 3 is going to be kind of as an up twist for you all, whether you decide on it or not. Again, I will give you both sides. Practice some aftercare if you want it. If your partner wants it. If neither one of you wants it, then this point is moot. Right? But it does give you, it is a great time for emotional check-ins, post-scenes, a couple days from scene. I've had partners who've wanted it, and I have other partners who are like, don't touch me afterwards. I'm fine. I just want to enjoy the high. So, whatever's comfortable for everybody. But again, that's something with part 1 you're going to communicate about before you do it. Finally, this is a big one. Seek support. If you're confused about your roles or how things are going in your life and you need to talk to someone, find somebody in the community. Maybe find a mentor. Find a family member or friend. Or if you're struggling, come talk to a therapist. I hear there's a couple of good ones out there, right? No pun intended. But look, the community's got a great support system. You can find a lot of people that are willing to talk. I wouldn't listen to a lot of Reddit. Nothing against you all on Reddit out there, but you know what? I've seen some Reddit themes. And be careful with some of the information you're also getting off YouTube. I've had a client that pointed me to a dominant there that's just giving some really terrible advice who's not qualified, and it's just terrible. So always second guess some of the information you're getting from somebody who's not qualified to speak about it, right? Personal experiences are going to be different, but make sure that they're at least marking what they're saying by, they're saying, hey, this is my personal experience with X, Y, and Z. Maybe it won't work for you. So that way you don't go into something that somebody might tell you, I don't know, let's say the topic of hypervigilance, for example. and how you can use that for you and it could be turned around. It doesn't really work that way, and it's really terrible advice, and that person was completely wrong. I'm not going to mention any names, but maybe understand things and talk to somebody and go from there. You don't be afraid, guys. Talking to people is not about being weak. When we seek help from others, it actually makes us stronger, and we also gain a lot more respect for ourselves and from somebody else. Now, it is clear these rules offer more than physical experiences for us. They do provide a pathway to understanding and enhancing our own mental health. And it's really important for men, right? Guys, I know we do some stupid stuff out there, but a lot of times the majority of you, they're not as bad as everybody wants to make you out to be. And we have to hold that close. But if we do decide to embrace these roles as a dominant or a sub or a switch, make sure you're going to go and be fully prepared to embark on that journey of your own self-discovery and empowerment and embrace the role wholeheartedly. Because it's marked by an exploration of desires and your erotic fantasies and how you're going to negotiate boundaries and cultivate trust with someone. And the bigger one here is how to be intimate and vulnerable with somebody in a consensual relationship. And beyond the societal norms, we really do know that our lifestyle challenges everything we know about relationships and helps us redefine what strength and vulnerability really is. And it allows us to be authentic and emotionally resilient. It gives us a chance and a space to integrate different facets of our identity, and it leads to more self-acceptance and a lot of personal growth. And it feels good, guys. It really does. Promise you. Learn to be a little bit more open and talk, right? And I can tell you, and I tell this to a lot of my clients, if you tell somebody something, if you become vulnerable with them, and they do anything but be supportive, that's not the person for you. Walk away. Walk away. I don't care now if that's for any of you. If you are vulnerable with somebody, and I'm not talking somebody you just met maybe after a couple of months, man, that could be a lot. But if you've been with somebody for a few years and you maybe have dropped the L word or you're heading in the L direction, you want a partner that's supportive. We don't want people that are unsupportive in our lives, right? That creates negative loops. But that's a different discussion for another day, all right? So I'm going to leave you all with a question today I want you to think about before I get into my shameless plugs. Number one, or not number one, but the only question I've got for you all is, how do you think, especially when it comes to men, how do you think societal perceptions of masculinity influence our participation in BDSM? Our participation meaning men. How is that influenced? How does masculinity do that? I'll put that question up on Spotify. I'll throw it in my social if you want to know more. If you are looking for a therapist, please feel free to reach out. My website, I'll put it in the description, www.enhanced-mind.com. If you need a therapist and you need to speak to somebody, please feel free to reach out. I work with people all over the world, about 5 to 6 days a week, so don't worry about that. You can always find a time to slot you all in. If you need help, or if you just have a question, I'm always able to answer questions. If you've got an idea for the show, please feel free to reach out. The Kink Perspective, the name of the show, all together at gmail.com. Willing to, if you have any questions like I get that are starting to pour in, please feel free. I do, again, my book is out. It's now in print edition. Tangled Desires, the intersection between psychology and BDSM, wherever you can buy your books, or the e-version has been out for a while. You can get that as well. I have a new podcast every Friday, so this is a Tuesday, but every Friday, BDSM, Blood, Death, Sex, and Murder, where I explore cases connected to the BDSM lifestyle, some that are even connected to FetLife, but most likely a lot of these cases are connected to our lifestyle and how we interacted, and I kind of deep dive and go a little bit into them a little bit more. That comes out, new second episode will be coming out this Friday. It is new. I'm still working out some of the kinks on that. I do hope you enjoy that. No pun intended. And once again, I just want to say this. I once again have a donate button or a donate link on my Spotify profile. If you feel so inclined, I want to first thank you again for all the people who've started to donate, no matter how big or small. It's been definitely felt and appreciated. Thank you so much. After 2.5 years of doing this show for you all, it does help me supplant some of the costs of getting this done. So I thank you for that. It's really important. I'm a one-man show, so sometimes, a little bit of extra goes a long way. So thank you again for all of that. Until next time, everybody, be safe and stay kinky.